Good evening. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to a genocide that never stops. This is our October the 7th special as we mark 2 years since the start of the genocide in Gaza. It has been a genocide not just live streamed, but viewed across the world, as close to 70,000 Palestinians have been murdered by the Israeli regime. The 70,000 we speak about are just numbers that are coming from the Gaza Health Ministry. When you read different reports, the number can stretch as high as over 500,000. A modern-day genocide being watched. And when we see the activities happening from civil society, from flotillas to protests across the world, we ask the question, has civil society become the voice of reason instead of that which were meant to be those of government officials? Let me introduce my panelists for tonight's discussion. Joining me from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank is Hamada, who is a political analyst and researcher. And joining me from Washington, D.C. is Omar Rahman, who is a fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. Hamada, I'm going to start with you. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran so much for joining us. Hamada, we are 2 years into this genocide, and I guess sometimes we are lost for words when we look at what is happening. But it's platforms like this where we can talk about it, speak of this impunity of Israel, and really ask those difficult questions with regards to this genocide. 2 years in, did anyone expect, and from your side, did you expect that we would have this genocide as deadly as it is right now?
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. Well, definitely not. I never imagined this, and unfortunately, still going on, and there is no an end in the horizon. When you think like how this happened, and as you said, it was live on the TVs everywhere, and day by day, and for 2 years. Yeah, this is a question mark about the global order that we live in since or after the Second World War. That it shows definitely that this global order doesn't work anymore. And it seems that, and I think we are seeing that maybe that this order could be changed. And even I believe sometimes during this war that the Gazans or the Palestinians, they are paying the price for this change that of the global order, the new global order that perhaps we are seeing or living or we will see the near future. And the sad thing also that I was following the Israeli media almost on a daily basis during these 2 years. And unfortunately, almost all the Israeli media, at least in the first year, let's say, at least, that they weren't saying anything almost of what's happening really in Gaza. They are not telling the Israelis what's really going on in Gaza and what their army is doing. So I'm not saying that could change something. Like who knows? But after maybe 1 year, we start to see that some people, some media, some figures in Israel, they start to speak up about what's going on, and definitely they were against. Some people for their own reasons, definitely, but also we saw some people that they are really against, and they call it even and name it as genocide. But this was like just a few months ago, or in the second year during the second year of this war.
Omar, I want to come to you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, and again, shukran for joining us. Omar, in the first 2 weeks since and at the time it would have been considered a war, a ceasefire deal was on the table from Hamas. They were willing to release the hostages and there were some hostages who were still alive. And it was quite clear. You've got Benjamin Netanyahu, who's got a fraud and corruption case pending. And it was evident that he was not prepared to go ahead and commit to any supposed deal that was brought by Hamas. He wanted this genocide to continue, and the proof is right there. And when we speak of impunity, this really was the start of Israel's impunity taking action if it already had not existed since the Nakba of 1948.
First of all, thank you for having me. Yeah, I mean, even just to piggyback on your last question, in terms of would we ever believe we'd be here 2 years later? To go back before October 7th, to arrive at this moment was in some ways predictable. And in my own writing, in my own work, in my own speaking, I used to talk about that Israel had, through its own policies of settlements, building illegal settlements and all this kind of stuff, had eliminated the possibility of a negotiated solution between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And that this was forcing Israelis and Palestinians into an existential conflict. What I thought would happen, and what I was writing about at the time, was that because they were eliminating the chance for two states, let's say, partition and an independent Palestinian state, then the Palestinians would start calling for equal rights in a single state. And that pressure on Israel building, in which it would have to either democratize fully, like in South Africa, and give rights to everybody and have one nation and abandon this Zionist project on one hand, or it's going to use its full coercive military powers over the very vulnerable Palestinian population in its midst. And this is the binary that we were heading to. So I thought it would come from that kind of action, and that the call for equal rights would be the catalyst for Israel to start using violence. I didn't expect it to come from this attack by Hamas, because who could have predicted this attack? The Israelis didn't predict it. Nobody could have seen that Hamas would have this kind of capacity, or that the Israelis would fail to protect the most militarized border in the entire world. But after that attack happened, and you saw the gravity of the situation, within a few weeks, people that are in the know, that understand the Israeli psyche, that understand the trajectory of a conflict that's 80 years old, and that began, with colonization and then the Nakba, realized that, the growing tide within Israel, in which it has very little options, is to forcible transfer, to expel the Palestinian people. So this was, so we could see this coming. And I wrote an article that came out, I think, at the beginning of November 2023, saying this is the logic of genocide. You have the proximate cause, which is that this attack happened, and Israel is saying we can never go back to October 6th. But we're not going to allow the Palestinian Authority or anybody else to come into Gaza. So what's the alternative? The alternative, what they're thinking immediately, was this is the chance to resolve the Gaza situation, to drive the people out, to destroy Gaza as an entity for all time. This is what they were thinking. And this fits within the broader historical context of Israel's and the Zionist movement's attempt to displace the Palestinian people and take over the entirety of the land. So again, it was predictable, but when you see it with your own eyes, as you're saying, in real time, when you see it every single day, the murder of children on your phone, being blown up, being starved to death, it's impossible to believe that the world will stand aside and allow it to happen. And that's been the hard part. That has been the difficult part. And that's why, as the governments of the world are standing aside and even continuing to provide Israel with arms and money and diplomatic support, that's why you're seeing increasingly the people rising up in different ways as much as they can to oppose this, because nobody, no human being can, with a soul, can see what's happening and stomach it and support it. It's these people that are in power that are cynical and evil. I don't really use that word very often. I don't think it's helpful in the kind of work that we do, but it's pure evil what we're witnessing with our own eyes.
Hamada, I want to come to you. For anyone who had mentioned that this had started, or this quote, which I find ignorant, and I'm sure both you and Omar would would agree with me on this, that this all started on October the 7th, 2023. Last week marked 25 years since, of course, that famous picture, and it's tragically famous, in Mohammed al-Dula, who was under the arms of his father in Gaza, when, of course, these uprisings began against the Israeli army. And these were the first of many incidents, and there are so many massacres that Israel has committed since the start of 1948. And I guess that education is important, isn't it? To understand the context of how this settler colonial state has really established itself, and it's been the Palestinian people who have suffered the most due to this.
Well, yeah, I just would like to add that I was expecting a new Nakba in the West Bank, and this is also in my writings. But yeah, I was expecting new Nakba in the West Bank, not in Gaza. Before that, before this the ongoing genocide, because as Omar said, that I was thinking that we have to put Israel and the Israelis in a situation that at least that they have to choose between two states or one state. And I believe in one state, and I also believe that would be the harder solution to fulfill. Could be. But yeah, as you said, that the Israeli ideology, especially the extremists, that they already now part of the current government and coalition in Israel, and I think it started there, by the way, that we start to see here in the West Bank, at least, that the new policies of the current Israeli government that started at the beginning of 23. We started to see that their project or their plan is to annex at least the West Bank and push as much as they can of the Palestinians out of Palestine, or if they can remain without equal rights, and the West Bank to be controlled by Israel, and probably the Palestinian Authority will not stay in its place as it's now. So yeah, this is what we were like expecting. I mean, giving to the statements of the current government and its members, and to be honest, that also we have our own internal issues as Palestinians. I mean, the division between the West Bank and Gaza, and the division between the leadership of Fatah and Hamas. And in fact, Hamas was sending, not like now they are saying, well, Hamas agreed to be out of the scene in Gaza. Hamas was sending many signs, even before October 7th, that they are not interested to control Gaza as they did at least in the last 17 years. And the signs were that agreed almost on everything that Fatah was asking to reach reconciliation with Fatah. And it was obvious that Hamas accepted almost all the conditions, and that's because they are not really interested to control Gaza anymore, and they were very interested in the reconciliation. So yeah, I mean that's we have homework, I think, to do even before October, and still unfortunately even after this genocide and during these 2 years, we're still divided. So I'm asking myself, I mean, why is this happening, and what are the motivation for the both parties that's to keep divided? As I mentioned, Hamas definitely, I think, that was very interested to reach reconciliation. Maybe for its own reason, maybe because it's really think that reconciliation is important and the unity, etc. I don't know, but at least the signs was obvious that they are really interested to reach reconciliation with Fatah. The other party, which is Fatah, I mean, it's unbelievable that even during these 2 years, that even that they met many times. The last meeting was in Peking, in China, that they went to China to sign such agreement, and unfortunately, at the end, nothing on the
Hamada, Hamada,
yes.
I have to stop you there because I have to get a question in. We only got 3 minutes. I want to get this question into Omar. Omar, we are going to touch on the leadership aspect in a bit, but Omar, I remember months prior to, of course, October the 7th, there had been demolitions occurring in Jenin and other parts of the occupied West Bank. And one could already see that the influence within the far right, and this is not absolving Benjamin Netanyahu at all, were intent on really establishing and continually establishing these illegal settlements by Israeli settlers. So within 3 minutes, the foundations were laid there already prior to October the 7th for this to occur.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned in my first answer, I think we were headed on that trajectory for a long time of this kind of confrontation. But it's not just this far-right government that was building settlements. Every single government since 1967 has built illegal settlements in occupied territory. This government is certainly, maybe the furthest iteration of right-wing governance within Israel. It has people that even at one point or another were marginalized within the Israeli political system, those people like Ben Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich and these guys who were on the margins. But they've increasingly, even if they've been on the margins, their message has increasingly moved into the mainstream in Israel. And their message was one of, this is all our land, it belongs to us by right of God, and that we can't allow these Palestinians to be in our midst any longer. We need to drive them out. And so that was the message of the far right, that you resolve this dilemma that Israel has, in which you have 7 million Palestinians and 7 million Jews living on the land at the same time, but we cannot offer them equal rights, and we cannot separate for them and allow them to establish a state. So what do you do with them? And Netanyahu for many years tried to manage the occupation, divide and conquer the Palestinians between Gaza and the West Bank, but to his right you had people saying, drive them out, drive them out, drive them out, and these are the people that are in government now.
After the break, we're going to be discussing leadership and overall leadership with regards to the last 2 years of the genocide. What is it in terms of Palestinian leadership? Where are we with regards to that? But also from a global perspective, especially the United States of America. Do stay tuned. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to A Genocide That Never Stops, our October the 7th special, as we mark 2 years of the genocide in Gaza. Omar, I want to come to you on this, and of course, with you based in Washington, D.C., I look at the American leadership, you look at Congress, you look at how the influence, of course, of the Israeli lobby group, AIPAC, has played a role in this. When Joe Biden was president, it was clear for many individuals, and especially here in South Africa, and we had a lot of debates around it, that a Democrat could not really stand for the people of Palestine, or certain members of the Democrats, because there are members of the Democrats that are fully pro-Palestinian. But when Donald Trump came into power, I remember he was at a summit where there were Muslims, or a rally that were Muslims, I beg your pardon. And he said he's going to stop what is currently happening in Gaza. And my word, weren't they fooled? Weren't the rest of the world fooled? Because quite clearly, if he's not encouraging Benjamin Netanyahu, he's giving him a further pathway to continue what we are seeing right now.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Trump is in many ways like others that have come before him and have been in his office. In other ways, he's quite different, and you might expect him to behave a little bit differently. I mean, if there was a president that is, detached from foreign policy orthodoxy in the United States, it's Donald Trump. If somebody that's maybe, doesn't have the same historical baggage in Washington and all that entails, it's Donald Trump. So you may have expected him, especially with his America First movement, to maybe perhaps move in a different direction. But at the same time, he is vulnerable to the same type of pressures. He is surrounded by people from the top down, all around him, within his cabinet, within Congress, and within the departments of state and the departments of defense, and within the bureaucracy of the United States, who are very committed to Israel, and therefore, have that kind of sway and leverage and influence over American policy. And so Trump, even when he starts moving in a direction that might be a positive one, he's brought back into line. And Netanyahu, in particular, who's visited the White House now 4 times within the first 8 months, which I'm guessing is unprecedented for a foreign leader, has tremendous influence over Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is able to be influenced. You hear that he is responsive to the last person that he speaks to. And the Israelis, one way or another, either themselves directly through Netanyahu and Ron Dermer and these advisors, or through their proxies in the United States, AIPAC and donors, and again, even Marco Rubio, who's committed to these projects and stuff like that, is hearing them talk in his ear all the time. So even if he may listen to Arab partners who are or Turkey or these countries that have influence with Donald Trump, and I think they do have influence, they're not speaking to him on a regular basis in the same way those who are supportive of Israel. And so, yes, America doesn't really have an independent foreign policy when it comes to the Middle East. It has been captured by the Israelis, and America does essentially, for the most part, Israel's bidding in the region, and we've seen that over a long period of time, and we continue to see it today.
Yeah, Hamada, there's something interesting Umar is mentioning there, a capturing of the United States of America. And this is the question to you, Hamada. What we have seen is that America's always said, well, we are an honest mediator in trying to make this ceasefire deal happen. But how can you be an honest mediator? And we're going to touch on that 20-point plan later on in this discussion. It's very difficult to trust the United States of America when you've got Benjamin Netanyahu visiting the White House 4 times since US President Donald Trump came back into power. And quite frankly, the swaying of power that Israel has over America is quite evident for everyone to see. You've got Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, who really, quite frankly, is not willing to even sit down with the Hamas leadership or even the Palestinian Authority, given its criticism. And it makes it difficult for everyone to see a possibility of the US really being this so-called honest mediator in what we are seeing right now.
In fact, I didn't hear the U.S. leaders or Trump or Biden saying that we are honest mediators. That they are openly say that we are completely supporting Israel, regardless of what it's doing. And so they didn't mention that it's America is an honest.
No. What I'm saying is, Hamada, they want to come across as maybe being that, so that they can see themselves as this custodian of democracy across the world.
Yeah, yes, I agree. But the question is, why we don't see other players that they offer their mediation in such conflict. And I think that to link the idea what I was saying at the beginning, that America, I think, it's definitely interested in this area, the Middle East, and will do. And I think the U.S. feels that they are losing that as the only superpower in the world that who control the world, and they are feeling the influence of China in the region. And I think they will fight as long as they can to keep their influence in this area. And definitely that, when you say Israel, you say America, and vice versa, when it comes to the common interests. So my question is that why? Well, America is obviously is not an honest mediator, but the question is why we don't see other players, global players such as China, Russia, whoever else, to be an honest mediator or to try to be a mediator in this conflict. We know that there is a veto, American veto on this when it comes to the Israel-Palestinian conflict, which is not. But because I'm saying that I feel that we are paying the price of the new global order. So, and these new players, such as China, I think that they can do much better to stop this genocide and to introduce themselves as a real global player that can compete with the U.S. Because what's going on, that as I said, the America is trying to repeat or to confirm its influence in this area and to cut any potential of China that we started to see, for example, in the Saudi-Iran agreement. And even before October 23, when Biden was in India, and when he was introducing a new plan for trade to compete with the Chinese one, and it was obvious that they are talking about this area: Emirates, Saudi, Israel, Jordan, Syria, and maybe Syria even. So I don't want to go deep in this, but yeah, we have to blame definitely the U.S., but also I blame at the same time the other potential global player that they didn't intervene.
Omar, I want to touch on the global south. South Africa, of course, took this huge decision to take Israel to the International Court of Justice. And of course, as we have seen, momentum has gained. You've got countries like Brazil, Nicaragua, Colombia that have stepped into the frame. But I want to touch on the Middle East because when you speak to many Palestinians, especially the diaspora here in South Africa, their anger is towards the Middle Eastern nations, this Abrahamic Accords. And they question as to how we have got here in order for this to happen. When we saw in the UN General Assembly these discussions that were going on, there was this hope that given the attack on Qatar, that there could have been a possibility of harsher action that these leaders would have taken against the United States of America and that of Israel. But we came out with it being milder than it was before.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a misplaced notion to expect these Gulf countries in particular. And I mean, we have to understand that the Gulf has become the power center of the entire region. Once upon a time, it was, had become kind of the economic center of the region because of their vast energy resources, but had really taken a backseat to more larger countries like Egypt in terms of directing the region's politics. That's no longer the case. I mean, this is really the power center of the region, and everybody's looking in that direction. At the same time, for the most part, the Gulf states are small states, weak and vulnerable from a military standpoint, and surrounded by much larger states. And we've seen that play out in various ways, be it with Iran or Iraq, once upon a time invading Kuwait. And so they feel vulnerable, and they've come to rely on the United States for a very long time for their security. In recent years, they have had good reason to pause and question the reliability of the United States in providing that security architecture. But they don't feel like there's a tremendous alternative. Yes, they are looking with greater degree at diversification of their security and their partnerships and all this kind of stuff, and they've been moving in that direction. But overall, there is no alternative. I mean, you can talk about China, but I'll tell you, China does not want to come in and replace the United States in terms of providing the security guarantees for the Gulf or for anybody else in the Middle East. Hamada, mentioned that China played a role, but in terms of negotiating a rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Yes, they did, but they were asked by both parties. And Israel and the Palestinians are not, both asking for them to come and negotiate, because Israel does not want to negotiate, has no interest in making a deal with the Palestinians, and the United States, as a global superpower, guards that file closely in order to protect the Israelis and their interests. And so there's nobody else to play that role. So after Israel attacked Qatar, Yes, the Qataris were furious. Yes, the other Gulf states were furious at the United States, and they made that known. And look, I mean, we started to see some action from Trump once he gradually realized the gravity of the situation and the threat to the United States' strategic interests in the region. He started becoming more responsive, and he got Netanyahu to issue a formal apology and call on the phone in front of him the Qatari prime minister to apologize. And Qatar just got an enhanced security guarantee from the United States that resembles NATO's security guarantees, the Article 5. So you see the United States responding to that, and the Gulf, what do you call it? And maybe the Gulf continues to diversify their relationships, but overall, they're not that interested in upending this kind of security architecture that's been in place for decades and that they've relied on. They just want the United States to be much more responsive and much more guaranteed in terms of their security, rather than the way it's been in recent years, in which it has had very good reason to question the United States, the dependence and the reliability of the United States.
Hamada, I want to come to you with regards to domestic leadership within Palestine right now. When we look at Hamas, obviously, Ismail Haniyeh murdered last year, Yahya Sinwar also at the same time. We've seen many of the Palestinian leadership, of course, being killed since the start of the genocide. We then look at the Palestinian Authority, and of course, there's divisive opinions with regards to them. A lot of it probably within the majority, saying that the current structure of the Palestinian Authority doesn't really show leadership. You've got Mahmoud Abbas, who in his own right doesn't seem to be the leader that Palestinian people look up to. And you mentioned that in the first segment. Where are we in terms of Palestinian leadership? And I ask this question again to you, Hamada. Are we in a crisis within Palestinian leadership right now, given that you've got the annexing that is occurring in the occupied West Bank and this genocide in Gaza that shows no signs of stopping?
Well, unfortunately, that this is what I was saying before, that we haven't to be in such situation. And I believe that if we reach reconciliation before the October, and I see October is a result of what's going on, whether from Israel or even from the Palestinian Authority. Because look what happened in 2021 when because we had planned elections in May 21, right? Yeah. And in the last minute, this is after 20 years of no elections. And finally, the president decided to hold the new parliament elections, not the presidential, only parliament, in May 2021. And then in the last minute, he decided by himself to cancel the elections without any consultation with other parties. Well, the excuse was because Israel will not allow Palestinian elections in Jerusalem. And this is a good excuse anyway to do that, if this was true. But yeah, the other factions, they were saying, let's do our best to enforce these elections in East Jerusalem, and which is another viewpoint that it gives more let's say, kind of popular confrontation with the Israelis in Jerusalem. And the president, he was always saying that I believe in popular resistance, etc., but he did nothing, even in terms of popular resistance. So what I wanted to say, that he canceled the elections definitely because his own party is also divided. He managed to divide his own party too, which is Fatah. And in that elections, 3 lists were registered to represent Fatah movement in that elections that was planned in May 2021. So when he saw that 3 lists from his own party, and so he felt that he's going to lose the control, even if his own party, and probably the majority in the parliament. So he decided, probably for this reason, he decided to cancel the elections, not because of East Jerusalem or Jerusalem. And then 10 days after the cancellation of that elections, we saw a new confrontation between Hamas and Israel for 10 days, if you
Yes.
remember, 5.1. And I think that confrontation was also a message from Hamas that, first of all, is not interested to control Gaza anymore, is really interested in reconciliation, is really interested to hold the new elections and to find new opportunities for Gaza, which is obviously was under siege for more than 15 years. So yeah, this kind of leadership that we have in the West Bank, which is, I think, and to tell you more, that at least in the last 10 years, according to the public opinion polls, between 70 to 90% of the Palestinians, they were asking the president to resign. This is since 10 years,
Yes.
and the range between 70 to 90. It started with around 70, let's say, in the last 10 years, and it's reached this year or last year more than 90% even, asking the president to resign. And he's still in office since 2005, which is 20 years without any new elections. And Netanyahu, even he was mentioning this in his speech at the UN. So this leadership and this authority, it seems like a burden on us as Palestinian people. So what I want to say that unity and reconciliation is definitely a must. And it seems that with the current leadership and the current president, there is no chance to reach this unity and reconciliation. And now he's and even Netanyahu also in his speech he was like kind of saying because there is kind of condition for the PA to have a rule in Gaza in the future if it did its own reform plan, and Netanyahu was saying something like this is impossible to happen.
Hamada,
Yeah.
I have to stop because we have to go for a break. But when we do continue, we're going to be discussing whether two states, is it really viable when you have Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu along with the far right of his government saying we will not recognize Palestine. The conversation continues after the break. Welcome back. 2 weeks ago, the UN General Assembly had many nations officially declaring in front of the globe its recognition of a Palestinian state. This included, of course, the United Kingdom and France as UN Security Council members. Omar, I want to come to you on this one. Firstly, how late was this recognition, number one? But number two, we still haven't received any supposed recognition of their complicity in assisting Israel, not only in this genocide, but the occupation that we have seen since 1948.
Certainly I think the wave of recognition that's happened from these few European countries is late indeed. The window for the two-state solution was many years ago, and it's basically closed years ago. Not to say that it is impossible. Anything that, all the settlements, anything that's built can be unbuilt, but the political will that's needed, all that kind of stuff, it's become pretty much impossible in practice to achieve a two-state solution. But to be honest, any negotiated solution for any thing is going to be impossible in practice unless costs are imposed on Israel for its actions, and that requires a mobilization of pressure, sanctions, arms embargoes, those kind of things, and the lawfare that South Africa is leading at the international Court of Justice and things like that. That is what's going to pressure the Israeli public and political establishment to be much more responsive to the Palestinians' demands for self-determination. As long as Israel has impunity, there's no accountability for its actions, then it has no incentive whatsoever to compromise or to come to kind of any type of endgame solution with the Palestinians that resembles, a just and fair solution. And so this is where we're at. And I don't think recognition, while it may have some merit, I don't think it's totally worthless. Although in the case of some, it's genuine. In the case of others, I think they're doing it to absolve themselves of their complicity, the complicity you spoke about earlier, their complicity in the crimes and the occupation, in the genocide that's happening. And they realize, because the whole world has accepted, there's a growing consensus around the world and within the UN and everywhere else that what Israel is doing is a genocide. And so those countries are feeling that type of pressure, and they don't want to be associated with that. And so they're trying to do something to kind of, show that they're maybe on the right side of history. But in many ways, it's too late, and it's an empty gesture unless it's followed by that type of pressure. So, but this could be the catalyst to mobilize that kind of pressure. But this is where it comes to, the leadership crisis you just asked Hamada about before the break. There is a crisis of leadership among the Palestinians. It's existed for many years. It's not new. It didn't start on October 7th, but the depth of it was revealed by October 7th, because, as Hamada said, there has been, despite an existential threat to the Palestinians, despite a genocide happening, there's still no unity. There's still nothing happening on the Palestinian side whatsoever at the political level. At the grassroots level, there's a tremendous amount of effort to try to change the equation. But politically, there's been nothing at all. And it's a shocking abandonment of the duties of these political leaders to defend their people in this existential crisis. And so who's going to lead this movement for accountability and for pressure for Israel? The Palestinians are relying on third states like South Africa and the Hague Group and countries in Latin America and in Asia, but they themselves are doing almost nothing to rally the international community, to rally their own people, to exercise leverage, to do any of these kind of things. So it's a tremendous failure, and I have very little faith that they are going to do what's necessary. Look, they're adopting, this Trump plan, and they're, doing whatever is asked of them, no matter how debased it is. And so, I'm very worried that there's going to be nothing. And I can criticize Hamas for the same thing, because it took this action on October 7th, knowing full well, and this is where I criticize them most. They took this action on October 7th, knowing full well that the Palestinian body politic, that the Palestinian national movement was broken and fractured, and that there was nobody at the helm to navigate the aftermath of this. And we've seen that play out, because the Palestinians have been voiceless since this genocide started 2 years ago.
Hamada, a few weeks ago in East Jerusalem, Benjamin Netanyahu, at an event called Bada Adunem, from what we understood, it was a gathering of many of the Israeli settlers and far-right members. And one would say he was speaking to the choir by saying, well, we will never see two states. There will be nothing of a Palestinian state. But one needs to take Benjamin Netanyahu for who he is. And just like the far-right, he is as extreme as they are right now, because when you look at the Likud party charter, it doesn't really speak of coexisting with a Palestinian state. When you hear this rhetoric, when you hear these comments that are coming, it really questions the world in terms of how blind could they have been, how deaf could they have been, just to not understand from an Israeli perspective that they themselves, and I'm talking from the government and majority within the Israeli population, to not want to have a two-state solution.
Oh, dear friend. Well, first of all, also that's, look, two state, one state, even two state. For us, for Palestinians, two state without Jerusalem is not a state for us. And even to go back to Trump speech when he was announcing his plan, he was proud to say that he recognized Jerusalem as capital of Israel. And this is he just reconfirmed that he did that, and he was mentioning that all the leaders, Islamic Arab leaders, they were warning him not to do that, because will happen, that and this will happen. And the same leaders, probably, that he met for this plan, to arrange for this plan, And he was saying, yeah, they were warning me that not to recognize Jerusalem as capital of Israel, and I did, and nothing happened. And I would say, yeah, maybe the same leaders, or part of them the same, that they were warning him in that time, in 2018, when he did recognize Jerusalem as capital of Israel. They were discussing with him this plan, new plan that he was introducing. And he changed it without even consultation with them. So he's repeating this, and to show that the weakness of the Arab leadership, and also, and this is my opinion. Definitely, before blaming the Arab leaders, I have to blame our leadership, and because look, I think the Israelis, that they felt very comfortable during, at least in the last 20 years, felt very comfortable to vote for very right, extremist, terrorist, right wing, because there is no price to pay as Israelis. So since there is no any price to pay for in this conflict with the Palestinians, so let's vote for the people that they want to end this conflict in their own way without a price. So what I want to say is that who did encourage, probably, I'm not sure about that, but when you feel that, who did encourage the Israelis to vote for such fascists in Israel, because they don't feel, the Israelis in general, I mean, that there is a price to be paid by them to reach peace for the Palestinians. And it's the opposite, in fact. And we know that even before October 7th, Saudi Arabia, it was up to sign kind of this normalization agreement with Israel, if you remember. So this attack came and changed everything. But what I want to say again, that probably because of our leadership performance and behavior, it encouraged the Arabs and the Israelis to ignore the Palestinians and the Palestinian cause. Because, as just Omar said, that whatever he was asked to do, he was doing since in the last 20 years, and in return, nothing. So, and definitely not. This is not happening in politics, and even in such conflict. So, yeah, it seems that they took advantage of us because of our leadership. Even that as a person, the president, I would say, definitely I criticize him on a daily basis. But when you look at his journey, let's say as a president, he wasn't elected in 2005. And in 2006, we had the parliament elections when Hamas got the majority of the parliament. And then in 2007, Hamas took control of Gaza. So I would say he didn't have the chance to fulfill his program. But no, this is not the case. But I'm saying just he wasn't lucky maybe to do that. But definitely, this is when it has to do with our relation with Israel. But internally, he did everything opposite of unity and to strengthen the Palestinian society.
Yeah, Omar, there's something important that Hamada mentions, and of course, when you speak to many Palestinians, and Omar would obviously speak on that also, that this one-state solution is probably what they yearn for, because the Palestinians have always been there. And the settler colonial state which was established erased any chance of that happening. But in order for the people of Palestine who yearn for this to happen, they need the strong leadership to occur. And you've mentioned it, the depth of the crisis within Palestinian leadership is revealing itself right now, because that self-determination, those human rights that the Palestinian people want, can't be achieved if the leadership is not standing up and making bold and brave statements.
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to the one-state solution, there's two things here. One is that the claim among Palestinians that the entirety of the land belongs to us, that is universal. every Palestinian knows what Palestine is, and it doesn't stop at the West Bank and Gaza. The ambitions of what was claimed in terms of the objective of the Palestinian national movement has changed over time. So it went from recovering the entirety of the land and then eventually settled on a mini state within the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And so where people come down on their support for a one-state solution and recovering all the land, or this partition, or something in between. It can be confederation of two states. It can be, a federal model, all that kind of stuff. That varies with time. And so I don't think that every Palestinian wants a single state, to live alongside with Israelis, because many Palestinians don't want to exist among Israelis anymore. They want their own state for themselves. And so that is divided and where it is exactly. But nonetheless, when it comes to leading the movement towards that objective, we don't even know what Palestinians want anymore. There is no vision. There's no strategy. And that is a result of failed leadership over decades, including Mahmoud Abbas. Because under his tenure of 20 years in power, he has fractured the Palestinian movement. He's destroyed the institutions. He's monopolized power in and of himself. He's demobilized Palestinian society so it can't act together to resist the Israelis, and it's so weak at the moment because of that. And so all of these things have happened under his control, and yet still he has, he's even if he doesn't believe it, he might not even believe it anymore that two states is possible. He remains committed to this two-state program and this Oslo, and he remains completely beholden and reliant on both the Israelis to deliver it and the Americans and the Western countries to continue to support him in those efforts. And because of that, there is no independent decision-making of the Palestinians. And he has denied the unification of Palestinians, whether Hamas legitimately wanted that or not. I believe they did, as Hamada said, and these other factions were interested in that. And he prevented it from happening on multiple occasions because, again, his benefactors in Israel and in the West were against Hamas rejoining the PA and also acceding to the PLO, to these larger representative bodies. And so this kind of held the Palestinians in this fragmented state. And this current leadership has been uninterested in challenging the Israelis and challenging the Americans and returning to this former, or revitalizing the Palestinian national movement, coming up with a new strategy, coming up with a new vision, and leading that charge. They're old. They have no energy. They have no vision or any of these kind of things anymore. And so we would prefer them to step aside and allow a new generation to emerge, but they've been unwilling to do that because they're also corrupt, power hungry, and they hold on to the reins of that control with all their lives. And Hamada mentioned a very crucial year, 2021, and I'll finish with this. 2021 was a critical year, in my opinion, a critical year, both for the elections that were planned and then prevented from happening. And then also, he mentioned that Hamas engaged in a 10-day struggle, but there was a much larger thing that occurred at that moment in April and May. Jerusalem, actually, what Hamas did in terms of firing rockets at Israel and starting that war was a response to Jerusalem igniting, and then the entirety between the river to the sea of Palestinians rose up, including Palestinian citizens of Israel, alongside Palestinians in the occupied territories. And this scared the hell out of the Israelis because this was their greatest fear of Palestinians from river to sea joining together, no longer fragmented, and pushing for a kind of a united struggle. And we just saw a glimpse of it, but it frightened the Israelis very much. And I think what we're seeing today in Gaza and in elsewhere is a result of that moment, both on the Palestinians' failure to unify and hold elections, which could have stopped what we saw in terms of the Palestinian deterioration, and the Israelis and their responses to the Palestinian national movement.
Hamada, we've got about 3 minutes. It's a short question. Would we have been having a different discussion if the likes of Sheikh Yassin or Ismail Haniyeh or Yahya Sinwar were in the positions of power from an entire Palestinian perspective?
Well, I think so, yeah. but yeah, like Omar, he just reminded me of something. Yeah, I was just mentioning the elections 2021, but yeah, definitely it was a historic moment that needed to be captured by the Palestinian. And unfortunately, after that, in that time, I realized that we really don't have leadership. Because yeah, that's moment. It's a historic moment, and I wrote a couple of articles about it and asking the leadership to act accordingly because it was for the first time the Palestinians all united, West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, 48. And unfortunately, the lack of leadership and the will of leadership and leaders that we lost that moment, and probably when you lose a chance or opportunity, then probably that you will pay the price after that. And unfortunately, we are paying the price since 2 years. I hope the future is going to be better, and we can see new leaders that can lead the Palestinian people for a better future. And but again, as long as the current leadership, especially in the West Bank, in place and power, unfortunately, no. Well, how we can change them? I don't know. Like probably that they will stay in power after the last day, and then maybe we'll have maybe a new crisis again, or hopefully not crisis, but maybe a new future for the Palestinians.
After the break, we'll wrap up the conversation, and we're going to be speaking what is the future like for the Palestinian people of Gaza if the genocide stops. Do stay tuned. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to this special episode called A Genocide That Never Stops, as we mark 2 years of the genocide in Gaza. Omar, I want to come to you. Part of the 20-point plan that was presented by US President Donald Trump has a specific individual that will be quoted to be a lavish name, as a viceroy or some sort of leader to take over in Gaza, and that is Tony Blair. And when I saw the name that could have been there, I'm sure, just like myself, yourself and Hamada thought of the war in Afghanistan, and of course Iraq, where millions of Iraqis had lost their lives on a claim that Saddam Hussein, the then leader of Iraq, had weapons of mass destruction. Until today, that has still not been proven. Tony Blair in Gaza, this is just not good, am I right?
Yes, I was shocked to see that name, although it doesn't even just stop with Afghanistan and Iraq. Tony Blair also had a role for a long period of time, I think 7 years, as the head of the International Quartet on the Israeli-Palestinian issue, and had nothing but failure, I think, in that role. Seeing a deterioration from 2007 to 2015, which I think are the years that he held that role. And so he's not, he's not somebody new to the situation. Plus, there was reporting in the last few months showing how his organization was heavily involved in planning what Israel has been doing in Gaza in terms of day after planning and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and all these criminal enterprises that the Israelis have been engaged in. And so yes, to see Tony Blair there, it is surprising, shocking in ways, in other ways not, because I think the Israelis put his name on there and the Americans, because they understand that they're trying to create a framework here in which they can dictate the terms of Palestinian recovery in Gaza in the long term if they can't do what they're originally planning, which is to drive all the Palestinians out of Gaza. So this is the kind of framework that they are establishing if they can't fulfill this ethnic cleansing plan of theirs. At the same time, I don't know what alternative there is. I know that the Arab states that engaged with Trump had a different plan, and that Trump allowed Netanyahu to get him on board and to modify that plan, and it looks very bad. And I share many of the concerns there. At the same time, I can't watch more Palestinian children being slaughtered and starved to death in the Gaza Strip. And I think there needs to be, a sober recognition that, we've been 2 years into a genocide and no one is coming to save the Palestinian people. Yes, we're seeing some momentum around accountability. Yes, we have the Hague Group. Yes, we have South Africa. Yes, Spain cut, arms embargo. But that doesn't really matter that much to the Israelis. And can we hold out forever for all these states to start sanctioning and arms embargoing Israel while they continue to slaughter and destroy the future of Palestinian life in Gaza? I can't imagine sacrificing hundreds of thousands of more people on this hope that the world is going to finally get its act together and rally to save Palestinians. And so if there's an opportunity here to stop the violence, to stop the killing, to stop the starvation, then I think that needs to be taken, and then live to fight another day in terms of what the Israelis are trying to do. Because you know what? It's not going well in the West Bank either. The fight needs to continue from Palestinians. It's not going to stop. Hamas has no cards to play because all they're holding on to really are 20 or 15 or 20 Israeli hostages that the Israeli government doesn't even care about.
Yeah.
They've shown through their actions that they don't care at all about their hostages. They're ready to see them die in pursuit of this larger agenda of genocide and ethnic cleansing. And so, I think something needs to happen in that regard in terms of, just accepting something that stops the killing.
Yeah, Hamada, I'm in agreement with Omar. I myself, both you and Omar also, would agree on this. We don't want to see any more Palestinian children dying. Enough is enough. And something has to give. But is this 20-point proposal going to be a further extent of the suffering of the people of Palestine? And when you read it, it kind of points towards that happening. I want to get your take on that, Hamada.
Yeah, well, it's definitely bad, and it's bad enough because even also that there is no guarantee even this bad plan to be implemented, because the head of this council, he called it peace or something peace, and headed by President Trump. And we know that what is Trump? He was calling to evacuate and push the people of Palestinians from Gaza and forever and without any return. And he wanted to do it as a real estate project. How we can trust such person or such a council that headed by this person and by Netanyahu. And what makes me that because they are asking to release the hostages or the prisoners in the first 72 hours, and then like there's no any guarantee that the war gonna stop or that it's gonna be continue with other means. And you mentioned Tony Blair, and definitely that that Gaza Strip is destroyed, completely destroyed, and it's a challenge to keep the people in such environment, especially if there is the person who are responsible to manage and to help the people after if the war gonna stop, and how to rebuild Gaza, and I think they will use the same different means to encourage the people to go out of Gaza. So definitely we want the war to be stopped, but even with this bad plan, there is no even guarantee that this plan gonna be implemented, unfortunately.
Omar, in terms of what this genocide has done in educating the humanity about the world, in terms of showing us what the extent of Israel's plans to annex not just the occupied West Bank, but also Gaza. What we have seen in the last 2 years, in the view of Omar Rahman, really taught us as society and as the world at large?
Well, I mean, we learned a lot, certainly about the hollowness of international law and norms, about the duplicitousness and hypocrisy of Western states that call for democracy and human rights, and then turned their back on the Palestinians and funded and armed a genocide and watched it happen in real time, and continued to lie to their own people and to the rest of the world. So in that way, we saw something, and something was revealed. It was unveiled in terms of those governments in the world, and of the failure of or the weakness in the region of states to respond and to act and to get involved, to use leverage that they may have diplomatically. We saw states take some action, but overall, it wasn't enough to prevent and to stop what's happening and to punish Israel's supporters, even for those states that don't have leverage over Israel. So we realized those things. At the same time, the entire the world, at the popular level, at the people level, have had their eyes opened, of what I just spoke about in terms of Western hypocrisy, but also of the Israelis and what they're doing to the Palestinians. For those who didn't know before, most of them know now, especially the younger generations have had their eyes opened, and they can't unsee what they've seen. And we're seeing people in London and in Paris and in Berlin, being beaten and terrorized by their own governments for protesting, and yet they go out into the streets every day to do so, and on campuses in the United States. And you're seeing public opinion change dramatically, even in the United States, despite controlling the media narrative, despite trying to control and getting all the heads of these social media companies on their side, and now buying TikTok and all the stuff to try to control the narrative. And yet they've been unable to do that. And the tide is turning in terms of public opinion. It hasn't changed and filtered in to the decision-making process yet, unfortunately, but we hope to see that in the future. But Israel may evade, and I've said this before, Israel may evade accountability for its genocide in the short term. But the whole world knows and recognizes that Israel has committed a genocide, and therefore that's going to be very hard to escape in the long run. It has shattered its image. It has destroyed its image in the world, and I don't think it's going to recover that very easily anytime soon.
Hamada, has the tide turned when you see, especially from civil society and the citizens of the world, the protests in favor of Palestine? Has it really turned?
Has it really what? Sorry?
Has it turned? The tide? Has the tide turned in favor of Palestine?
So yeah, it's impressive. It's seeing these people protesting for almost weekly, every week, in Europe and Australia, Canada, America itself, the position of South Africa when it comes to the court. So this is the point, that you imagine all this support from the world for the Palestinians, and we still have such leadership. Like, this is what I don't believe. This is what I believe, that if we have another leadership, definitely it will make a difference, and it's make a difference anyway when it comes to the people that protest almost every week. And we saw yesterday the reaction for Flotilla in many cities in Europe. Almost it was midnight, and the people went out and they were protesting in the streets. And even it's not a weekend. So, well, yeah, I mean, it's something that this is the point, because we were talking about the international law, etc. But at the end of the day, it's not about the international law, which is we need, and which is we still count on. But what we need, the actors and the members that they are responsible to fulfill and implement the international law, to be changed. because at the end of the day, the international law that we need it. We need it as I believe that all the third world that they need such thing to prevent them from other powers. And so yeah, this is the point. We count on the people, and I think it's a matter of time. Could be that that, for example, look at the street in Italy that protest almost in every single city in Italy, and this Prime Minister Meloni, I think it's gonna lose as other they lost, because because it's no one can understand you that you stand with Israel while it's committing this genocide. And I believe it's a matter of time. Anyone, and we saw it. I mean, during these 2 years, how some leaders and governments, they changed their position, and it's a matter of time to the others that they still support Israel to change their position too. So yeah, you cannot imagine how these protests can how the Palestinians feel about it. They feel that they feel the solidarity of the people around the world and this what keep us moving and resisting, in fact, because that we know that someone is also thinking and resisting and supporting the struggle of the Palestinian people.
Hamada, Omar, 2 minutes each just to give your closing remarks. I'm going to start with you, Hamada.
So hopefully this genocide will end soon. And from that point, we have, as Palestinian people, not leaders, we have to understand that we have to be prepared for the future with much better leaders, and because without that, we are going nowhere, despite all these gains, such as recognition of Palestinian state, the solidarity around the world, etc. It's the time, I think, to mobilize ourselves despite the challenges that we face here in the West Bank and Gaza, and to introduce and to produce a real leadership that its legitimacy is from the people themselves, not from any other place.
Omar?
I would say that the priority needs to be at the moment on ending this genocide in Gaza and the survival of the Palestinian people there at any cost. The Palestinian struggle is going to live on. People are going to continue to fight because Palestinians are denied their very basic rights. And that sacrifice, I don't think, needs to be borne any longer by the people of Gaza. The people of Gaza have suffered a torment that I don't think anybody in the world can even imagine unless they've lived there. And so I think enough is enough. At any cost, we need to allow these people to recover, to start to recover, to start to repair themselves, have some relief from the suffering that they've had to face, and the children of Gaza to recover and grow up. That's one aspect of it, because the people that are they are worried about momentum shifting away from this accountability movement. Israel still has an apartheid in the West Bank, and they're still pushing for annexation, and they're still pushing for displacement of Palestinians, and they're displacing communities there. So that fight will live on. Let the Palestinian people in Gaza rest, and the fight will continue elsewhere, and it will, and people can mobilize all over the world in defense of the Palestinian people and that fight, and for accountability and justice against the Israelis. And as Hamada said, and I completely agree, that the baseline for that, it starts with the Palestinian people and the Palestinian national movement repairing itself, revitalizing its representation, revitalizing its institutions, and coming together to develop a new program and strategy for the future. So that's where I land. Palestinians need to do that for themselves, to get rid of this leadership that's been there, this purported leadership that claims to represent the Palestinians, and to revitalize themselves and to let Gaza survive.
Omar, Hamada, absolute pleasure hosting both of you gentlemen. Shukran so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you.
That's Omar H. Rahman, a fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs, and Hamada Jaber, political analyst and researcher. He came to us from Ramallah. Omar came to us from Washington. And that's all we have for you here on A Genocide That Never Stops. From myself, Fahraaz Patel, and the rest of the team from Johannesburg that brought you this production. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.